How's the sound? Okay, today we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to show you how to work with G-codes and how they actually work. I know there's some confusion about them. So what I want to do is actually walk you through the process. So I'm going to show you a little picture. This might not make sense initially, but once you see it, you'll get an idea. Excuse me. So over here we have something called run, ready, wait. Essentially it's a loop, and this is a simplified representation of what's occurring. So when you have a G-code that's executing, it's running. When it's sitting in a file, it's ready. And then you have a queue that waits to actually run it. So essentially it's a big loop. So if we look at a G-code file, which I'll show you how to create in a second, we can see what's going on. So G-codes are also used to do analysis on what's occurring, like M119 shows you what the status of your end stops are. So if you were to type that in at the prompt in something like Pronterface down here, then it would execute, and that would be the run portion. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually show you how to build it. So right here we have the actual configuration for Ultimaker Cura, and I'm just going to drop a file in. Now it's not really configured for a printer, just I'm going to set up G-codes for a particular configuration. So I'm going to go over to here where we have the design that I have up on Patreon, and I'm just going to export it. So I'm going to click over here and do an export STL, which is stereo lithography file. So I'll click over here and I'll say save. Then I'll say yes. This will take a second to actually save. Then I'll go back over to it, and I'm going to copy a file into Cura, which is over here. So I'm going to move this over for a second so I can actually do it off the other screen. So if I go to export, I'm going to drag a file in right here, and now we can see the actual design, and we can actually manipulate the G-codes or see the G-codes after we've sliced it. So slicing actually occurs layer by layer. I know most of you guys probably already know this, but I'm going to show you what happens. So I'm going to go over here to slice, which is down in the bottom right hand corner, and I'm just going to click slice. It's going to say save to disk, so I'm going to save it as Raspberry Pi, and the extension is going to be G-code. So I'll save that, then I'll open the folder, and it's the very first thing at the top that we just rendered. So to see what this is, I'm actually going to edit it in Notepad++. So what you can see is occurring here is that it gives you a little bit of comments. These are little semicolons that you see right here. Then down here are the commands. So if we were to look these up, these would actually be pretty easy to understand. So if I go over to, hang on, let me bring it up here. If I go over to Marlin's website and I go to Tools, hang on, I gotta remember where this is, G-codes, all documents, and we scroll down and we look for M140, we can see what's occurring. So in this case, it's setting the bed temperature before it does anything. So we now know what that command means. And then you'll see that it's setting it to 60 degrees Celsius, because everything is in Celsius at the moment. Next thing it's going to do is it's actually going to set the actual temperature for the extruder. So what we can do is we can actually check to see what the M105 and M190 are to see what's occurring. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over to the browser and we'll look for M105. 105 is report temperature, so it's going to say what the temperature is. Then we're going to do hang on, let me pull it up here. M104, which is probably going to be the extruder. So it says set hot end temperature, which is the extruder. So it gives you the nomenclature, and then it gives you examples down here of what's occurring. Now I know a lot of this seems boring, but there's an important understanding that you have to come from, and that's if something misbehaves on your computer, it might be a G-code, such as when you do multiple colors, and trying to figure out what the issue is going to involve dissecting your G-codes. So as you can see right here, we have a G28, then we have a semicolon and a comment that says, home all axes. So that's going to be X, Y, and Z. And it's actually axes. Pardon me. So that's going to be telling it to essentially go back to this model over here. And it's going to say run G28. And so when it runs it, it's going to wait, in this case, to see that it gets output for the actual end of the axis. So there's going to be a trip of the actual end stop for the signal pin, which is then going to be ready to send over here and stop this operation. So it's essentially a loop like this. I'm actually using a VAX VMS model that's been simplified, but essentially we're in a loop waiting for something to occur. And while that's occurring, other things might be occurring in the loop, but as soon as it reaches the end of the axis, that's what we're seeing with the G-code. So I wanted to actually clarify what's going on with the printer. So if you do other commands, you can actually get a readout for what's occurring. So if we go over to G-codes, we can actually find some interesting ones in here. There are ones that set, for instance, the EEPROM, which are down in here. So we have save settings, restore settings, factory reset settings, report settings, which is M503. So I'm going to connect to the actual board so we can see this. Let me just move over so I can do this for you. So I need to connect the cable over here and then locate the port because I don't know what configuration we're in. So if I were to go over to here, I have to figure out what the actual device is. So let me make sure you can see what I'm doing. So inside of here, what we're going to do is we're going to bring up this device, but I have to do it from here first. So I'm going to type device manager. And when I bring up device manager and you can see it, we can see what the port is. In this case, it's 15. So we're going to go over here and double check to see if it's present. It's not, so we'll highlight this, backspace, say 15, and then we'll do a connect. And we might not connect right away, so I may have to reset this. Give me a second here to power cycle it. So I'll show you what I'm doing. So we'll reconnect this. This is actually the Pro, so it might be slightly different from my other boards. So let's try connecting again. There we go. So now that we're connected, we can try a G-code like M119. Nothing's connected for the end stop, so they're all triggered. But let's do the M503. And now we can see what all our settings are for the printer. Now there's a lot of interesting ones in here, like if you're transferring one printer to another where you're recreating the actual firmware, this associates to the actual default settings that you would have for your printer as it's currently configured. So in this case, an M92 is one of the commands that executes within the M503 to give you these, and I'll show you what it relates to. So if I go over here and I go to my configuration.h, I'm going to search on A4988. So essentially I'm in the neighborhood of where it is. It's right here. So that's the actual settings that you have default in your Marlin, and you can't see what I'm doing, so let me show you this. So if you search inside of here for configuration.h, you'll see the default access steps per unit relates to the setting over here. So you can actually pick out your settings. Now there are other settings in here that are for max acceleration and so on and so forth that'll allow you to set up other things. But if you decide to transfer to another board from what your current configuration is, this is the easiest way to find your settings with M503. So that's a useful command. Now if we go back over here, we can probably find that there are other interesting commands in here. And I know this doesn't seem initially interesting, but it's a great way for you to set up your configuration. So if we look around, you can see there's like a change filament, M600. This is a command that you can initiate the change filament procedure, and then there's certain things that occur. Now this is in the advanced settings. So if you were to go over to here and you go to configuration advanced and you search on, let's do filament and see if this shows up. So there's a bunch of things for filament, but I think this is the power loss recovery. Sorry, it's not in the normal place because they've reorganized these. So we have tool change, which would be like a swap of filaments. So you can see that there's different things in here. Has multiple extruders. This is, I think, new, but I'm not sure. Normally this is over here. If we were to go to the beginning of the file, you would see that there's the multi-configuration for filament. And there's several different types of ways to work with it. So I know it's down in here someplace. Here we are. So if you have multiple extruders, you can say that you have 2, but when you go to compile this, you might have issues. In this case, you could say, okay, it has a single nozzle rather than multiple, and enable that, and it should compile well. Now, if you do mixing, things get a little weird, and there's a little script that you have to set up. It's someplace in here. And somebody in the chat for Discord, or several people, have worked with it, so you can actually do that. Hey Jessica, how's it going? Let's see. Hello everyone. Hope you're all keeping well today. Yeah, today was a fun day. Apparently we got in a foot of, what was it, a foot and a half of snow last night, so I'm still a little soaked from moving my car. So, as you can see, the multi-extruders right here, that's some more functionality that we can find with G-codes. But you can also test your printer by creating your own G-code file. Like if you want to see if it homes correctly, you can actually just take like this portion down in here where it says G28, and that's going to be your home all axes. If you wanted to test, for instance, that it's setting temperature, you could use the information up here. So there's lots of little comments that'll give away what's occurring. These are actually motion of the actual printer while it's maintaining heat. So in this case, I think it's printing a skirt so that it actually connects to the actual print surface better, and then it prints the model after that. So the actual model might be down in here someplace, depending upon how many movements there are. But at the very end of the script, you'll see some interesting things as well. So I'll scroll all the way to the bottom. Down in here, you can see that it's turning everything off. That's something you have to set up in actual Cura. So inside here, you can actually set the scripts to do this. Let me see if I can add a printer to show you. So configure, that's not it, sorry. It's been a while since I've done this, so I've got to figure it out again. Okay, that's search. Here we go. So add a printer. So as you can see, you have add an IP printer, add a cloud printer, but you can just do a regular add of a non. In this case, you have to select it. So I'm going to select something that's similar to what I'm working with. So in this case, I'm going to go to Creality, and then I'm going to find a Creality Ender 3 or Ender 3 Pro. Click on it, click Add, and then inside here we can set the actual bed settings. If they're not defaulted to what we want, we can change them. And this will relate back to the Marlin G-code flavor. Now, I don't know if they've added Klipper in here yet, but you can see all the different types of firmware that exist. And they're all basically based on Marlin, or I think it's begins with an S. I can't remember the name of it. But if you look down in here, hopefully I can make this larger. Well, they have start G-codes, and then they have end G-codes. So these are the things that are occurring before and after your printer completes. If you wanted to add an additional extruder to this, number of extruders, you could pull this. Obviously it's not working the way I think it should. So let's go over here and see if we can figure it out. So there's fans. So over here technically you should be able to add another extruder. See why that's not occurring. Interesting. They may have changed something, or it might be a custom printer. So let's cancel out of this and see if we can figure that out. So if we go over here to manage printers, add a printer, and then find custom, and we'll call it custom FFF printer. Now we can add additional extruders. So if you do something like 8, which is excessive, you can see that there's going to be multiple settings for each one of the extruders. Now if it shares a print head, in this case being you have a single extruder, but you have multiple inputs, then you're going to have to learn to modify your actual G-codes. So if I go back over here and I change it to 2, and right now we don't have multiple actual layers. I've actually done a live stream on how to do this, but I have a cone that you can connect them both together. So let me see if I can find that real quick. So if I go back over to, let me see if I have the cone still. I've got to figure out where I left it. Obviously you're seeing some of the projects I've worked on. So I can't find my cone. I think it's up on, what is it, Thingiverse? So inside here, we can see if we can search on this. So let's see if I can find it. Here it is. So inside here I have a cone that I can download. That's 2 pieces. So if we pull this down, you can see how we can deal with different designs. So this is going to ask me to tip the designer probably. Unfortunately, I'm the designer. And I can't figure out why it's not pulling, but let's try pulling it over here. Used to work up here. I don't know why it's not working. So we have these 2 pieces. So essentially these are going to be in our downloads folder, which I'll bring up over here. And I'm going to make this slightly smaller and bring this over for Cura. And it's been a while since I've done this, so give me a second to figure it out. So essentially I'm going to bring over the base, and then I think you right click, and then we have a second extruder. So let me bring over the other piece and let's see if we can tie them together. So I think you do it this way. Let's see what's going on here. There it is. Let me see if I can bring this back. So essentially you're going to highlight them both, I think. Or let's see if it's Control A. Right click. And let's see. I think we merged them together. Whoops, I just made copies. Let me back out of that. Let me see if I can position this. So you can probably position it, but this is not the correct way to do it. It's been forever and a day since I've done it. So let's see. Click on this. It's using the other extruder, but there's a way to do them both. Let me see if I can get it to work, because this has been forever. Let's see, placing objects, unable to find the location. Let me move this over. Center select. Let's see, there's a way to do this. Okay. Sorry, it's taking a second. I might have to look it up, but it's been forever. Or you can just watch my video. But essentially, you can see that it's changing here. So if we were to try and slice this, hopefully it'll work. I'm trying to show you an actual problem with this. So save to disk, we're just going to call it the cone. Click over here, open the folder, and I'm going to have to see if I can find it real quick. There it is. So I'm going to open this up in Notepad++. Now the bug with this has to do with turning off the extruder. So I'm going to scroll down here because it doesn't know there's two extruders. And we're going to look for what happens at the end. So there should be something that turns off the extruder, which is M. Well, I can't find it, but there's a way to do this. I think it's M107. So if we go over and we check G-codes, we might be able to see this. So M107 is right here, fans off. So the extruder off is what we're looking for. So let's see if we can find that. Set bed temperatures might be it. There's no actual setting for extruder off. So M104. So if we go in here and we scroll up a little, you can see that it's being set to 0 here. But if we go to the top, you'll see what's happening. So if I type Control F, and then say M104 space S0, it should find either one or multiple of these. In this case, it's found one. Let's see if we can search and find them all. So it's turning off 2 right here. Now currently I might not have these marked right. But essentially what's going to occur is when it finishes a layer, when it's multiple actual colors, there's going to be an extra one here when you're using a single extruder that's going to confuse it. And this might have been fixed as a bug, but what you have to do is delete the second to last one. And I'll show you what the extruder looks like that's causing this issue. Let me see if I can find it real quick. So here's the extruder. I'm going to disconnect the power for a second and put it where you can see it. And if you look at the bed, if the power doesn't go out, there's an extruder right here. Essentially it takes two inputs. So on this one I made a mistake. I have actually two of these. So I essentially have to clean out the actual material, but I forgot to put the PTFE all the way down into here. So essentially, when this is running two extruders into here, what's occurring is only one comes out, but it thinks there's two heaters and two thermistors. So when it turns off this, it'll stop extruding. So the reason that I'm showing you this is so that you can decipher what's occurring on your printer and then plop it into a file and try it for yourself. So I've been getting a lot of questions, and I know you can't see what I'm talking about, so I'll do this again. Here's the extruder. As you can see, that's my mistake that I made on this particular one, but it has two inputs and one output, and it doesn't know that there's a thermistor here and a heater cartridge here. It thinks there's two when there's actually just one. So going through the G-codes, you can actually decipher that issue, and that took me a couple of days to figure out as a problem, but I was able to solve it after I understood what was occurring in the G-codes. So let me check on the chat, because apparently I've gone off the reservation for watching what's going on. Let's see, Control A, merge all. Yes, I probably showed this a bunch of times and forgot about it. So let's try and see if that works real quick. I'll move over to that screen in a second. Okay, Control A. There we go. Is there a merge all in here? Merge models. There we go. So now there's two models. Now it looks as one because we haven't set different PLAs, but if you were to change the colors of these PLAs, let's see if we can do this. I might have to set the color someplace else. So let's click over here, manage printers. Let's see. Materials maybe? There we go. So for the particular printer that we're working with, you might have to set your temperatures a little bit higher. So let's see if we can set the settings. This is going to get really interesting for a second for me. Printer settings. Hang on, let me go back and try this again. Manage printers. Well, let's just do it this way. Let's see, extruders 2. Go to the first extruder. See if we can set the color. Apparently not. But the material actual compatible diameter is 1.75. And it's 1.75 in here. And then we're gonna have to have G-codes for beginning and end for either the first or the second extruder. Go to the printer, they already have G-codes. So you're gonna have to figure that out. It's been forever since I've worked on that. But let me see if I can find the setting, because I know it's in here someplace. Actually, it might be, hang on, I think I know where it is. If I go over to here and I look for the colors, so let's search on color, or let's search on PLA. Now I know someone probably already knows where it is. Let me check the chat before I do this. Let's see. What Big Tree Tech motherboard is this? This is the Octopus Plus, I believe. No, Octopus Pro, pardon me. But let me see if I can find something in materials here. Lovely. Now I gotta figure out how I set this up. I know there's a place for colors. Let's see, manage materials. See if we can turn that to green. That one to blue. It might not represent it in here, but essentially it doesn't really matter as long as it knows to pick between the two extruders. This is a kind of difficult setup that I have to experiment with, so it's going to be kind of lame watching me do it, but you can see the colors right here. Obviously they're not allowing you to see them in different colors, so that's awesome. Anyways, there's another application you can do this in. You can do it in Slicer, where it's a little bit easier, but essentially you can see the breakout of colors, and then the slice hopefully will fix the situation that we're seeing between the two. Let's save this again, and let's see if it updated over here. Yes. So let's search on this command again. Find next. So apparently it doesn't know the difference, but I know there's usually this command occurring up here, way up here. And the reason that I found it was I had to actually dissect the G-codes between the actual layers to actually find out what was going on. But I'm not showing you a very good example because this is kind of difficult to show. But you can see that there's something occurring between these, and I had to do about 10 prints before I could narrow it down to where it was. Let's see what else we have for questions here. My whole street went out just now to shovel the snow as a community. Yeah, we were all out there earlier today. Apparently we got 1.5 feet of snow, or what's that translate into millimeters? Or I'm sorry, centimeters. That'd be about 15 centimeters, I think. Wait, it's 2.5 millimeters or 2.5 centimeters per inch. So it's probably about 36, 37, maybe 40 centimeters. I'm just doing it a rough estimate. So we were shoveling for a while since about 4:15, and we have to move our cars by 6, so that's why I'm a little foolish right now. Let's see, I don't see anything except the G-codes. Let's see where we are. I have to transition between screens when I show you guys stuff, so here's the actual board that we were just talking about. I can zoom in to show you. But as you can see, this board is brand new. I haven't experimented with the actual steppers. I want to do more research before I fiddle with these, because there's a different power requirement that you can mess with to actually get powerful steppers to actually function better. But that's going to take some time for me to research. On this board though, it's very similar to the other one, being the Octopus. It's just an upgraded version where they move things around. Originally these, being the BL Touch, I think were over here. And they did something over in here, but I'm not sure yet what it is. But I'll show you how to pull that up real quick. If we were over on the desktop and we were to go to here, let's see, I gotta find the right board because I think I was on the MKS website. So GitHub, and then it's BTT. If we click on this, there's probably going to be multiple Octopus in here, or octopi. So you can see there's the Pro version up here, and then the regular version 1. So inside here they're going to have documentation. Great, you can't see it. There we go. So let me go back and show you what I did. So essentially, let me cut this out for a second. These are all the hardware if we click on repository, but if we put in a search term, it'll narrow it to what we're seeing, being Octopus Pro and the regular Octopus. So if I click over here, I can see what the information is about this board. And this is one of the new things they've done, which is a voltage change. So I want to try this off camera before I cook another board in front of you guys. No one's really ever going to use a max of 28 volts. You're probably only going to go as high as 24, but it says that it can support, I guess, up to 60 volts. I don't recommend it unless you know exactly what you're doing. And then there's a couple other things about this board. I guess you can do both NPN and PNP, which is the reverse of each other. And this has to do with probes. So there's certain static probes you can put on it for either capacitive or inductive. I recommend inductive because capacitive has a habit of cooking wires. And then you can actually choose either type, I guess. I haven't tried this yet, but they're saying what the pin is that you can use for it is possibly this one, but it could be other ones. And I guess there's other hardware you can use on the board. This looks like it's a temperature sensor. So if I were to search on that, let me search over on the other screen and bring it over. So let me see if I can find a picture of it real quick here. I gotta find one made by Big Tree Tech, I'm guessing. Apparently I'm not, oh, actually I just found one. So this is what it looks like. So I think it's a temperature sensor. Yeah, it says module temperature detector. So essentially this might be a higher precision tool to work with, but technically you don't really need it unless you're doing something highly important. But essentially it doesn't look like it's worth buying based on, you know, this is $12.28, whereas if you were to buy a temperature sensor like, hang on, let me find one here. So let me check on eBay because this is going to be a little bit more difficult. So thermistor 3D printer. So essentially here's one that's just as good, and the price is $8.99. You can even get them cheaper, but essentially all you're paying for is the glass in here, and this one has a special connector so you can disconnect it and reconnect it. Basically, I'm cheap when it comes to parts. If it functions, I don't worry about it. So let me get back over to the chat here for a second. Klipper takes a little bit more effort to do during a live stream. So I have made several Klipper videos, and I'll point out what those are. Let me put one in the chat here for you. But essentially I got to bring up YouTube and find it real quick. So if I go into my channel and I go in my playlist and I look over here, inside the playlist there's the Klipper configuration. This should be similar to, but not the same as, the actual configuration that you see normally. So this would be the actual website to where you can see it. That'll bring you to how to configure Klipper. Now there might be some variation because of the board type. So if I go over to the board and I show you something, hang on, let me switch the view here. So if I were to zoom in, the processor in this case is probably a little bit out of view. I just pushed it up so you could see it. But right down in here, you're going to have to be aware of the STM32F446 in this case. That processor may be different than the one in the actual video. So when you're setting up Klipper, you're going to have to select the right processor. And I think the steps are almost the same for the configuration that you would normally see. So let's transition over here and search on Klipper. There we go. So inside here, there's a configuration reference probably. It might say what to do for a particular one, but there's actually a GitHub where you can actually look this up. But I gotta see if I can find it real quick. It's kind of hard to find in here off the top of my head. Let's see. Configuration changes. Apparently they talk about when they've made changes. So it looks like just the other day. So that would be yesterday. So let's see if I can find the actual page. Overview, features, frequently asked questions, releases, install configuration. Well, this is the other type of G-code. Theirs is going to be slightly different, but they do labels inside their configuration files, so you can actually do G-code macros, which is kind of cool. Can't find the file off the top of my head. Might be over here. Here we go. So configs. So here are the examples. There's going to be different types of boards in here. So the SKR Pro is probably going to be the same as the other one for the Octopus. Let me search on Octopus because I probably scrolled right by it. So here's the Octopus. There may not be a second Octopus. It might be both in one. but here's the generic configuration, and you can find other ones on the Klipper website for GitHub. But this essentially gives you a walkthrough of what the pins may be. You may have to modify them. Now, I did talk about it in the video that I put in the actual description, so hopefully that'll be helpful. Well, there's advantages and disadvantages to where you use Klipper. If, for instance, other functionality in Octopus, or excuse me, in Octoprint, you can do things like you can monitor your print and automatically shut it down if it starts failing. Whereas I don't know if Mainsail can do that. So the plugin is a huge advantage for using the Octopus or Octoprint as a way to work with your printer. But I'm getting a little bit worn out today because I was actually outside shoveling for about an hour and a half. So I'm going to point everyone to where they can ask questions when I'm not on an actual stream. So essentially, let me bring up this so you can see. Hang on, I gotta bring it over. So over here, there's a Discord that there's a link to in the actual video and all my other videos. And essentially, if you have a question or a request to work with something, you can post it here, and if it's easily feasible, I'll try and do it as a actual tutorial, depending upon how old it is, or if I have the equipment. But it's a great place to ask a question that I might be able to address. Obviously, I didn't talk about the, what do they call it? The Big Tree Tech Pi display. I think that's the one for the Raspberry Pi. I didn't think this presented a value that was worth doing, because unfortunately they have a static image of Octopus, or Octoprint, pardon me. And so I opted not to show you guys this, and I'm using this for something else. But essentially it's just grabbing the firmware from their website and loading it on your Octoprint or your Raspberry Pi 4. And I'll show you how that works real quick. So if you go over to Big Tree Tech's website, and I think you have to search on Pi. It might be TFT Pi. Let's try Pi. Well, they may have taken it down. Let's see if it's in the overview. Or I have to find the actual part. Give me a second and let me see if I can grab it. I'll show you what I'm actually talking about. Let me just change the screen real quick. As soon as I zoom out real quick. So essentially there's a part, as soon as I can find it. Here it is. So this is a display. It's a touch display, and it's called the Big Tree Tech Pi TFT 50. It's not a regular display. You actually connect a Raspberry Pi to the back of this, and then you have this little cord that goes in to connect to it, and it functions like a touch panel. It's not the same as Octoprint in a lot of ways. So let's see if we can find it real quick. TFT 50. So it's not this firmware. These are the normal ones. So Raspberry, not showing up. Pi. So they may have moved this around on me. That's awesome. So essentially there's something in here that I found to work with it. They may have taken it down because it was difficult to work with. Let me translate or transition over here. So essentially inside here, they used to have a link to it. I think they may have taken it down because it was a nightmare. Somebody actually did a tutorial on it, but I decided not to. Let's see if this is it. Okay, this might be it. So essentially you have to download and actually set this up. And the setup for this is much more difficult than normal. And most of the time when you have an Octo print configuration, you're just going to remote from your computer. So you're not going to actually use the screen, you're going to use your own computer, because the premise is to push it to a client machine so that it doesn't weigh down your computer. So that's why there's no screen necessary, because it's an actual web interface. So having a screen kind of makes it useless, but you can actually load their actual image here, and then you've got to mess with all their files to try and get it set up. So it took me a little bit of work to do it. Didn't feel like showing you guys it because I think you'd be frustrated by it, and it's kind of expensive to do something that you don't need. But here's the image, I think, for it. It's also behind in time. So let me check real quick to see if I can find the Octopus or Octo print. So current version of Octo print, I believe, is way ahead of this, and updating it might not work. Where is it? Setup instructions. I'm looking for the download. Yeah, it's right here. So it's behind by an actual version now. So I'm gonna cut out early today. I just said I was gonna come on for a bit today. Remember where you can ask the questions. Obviously, everyone take care, be safe, and I'll be cranking out a tutorial on talking about this as soon as I figure out a better way to present it. But essentially, G-codes are kind of important to understand. And if you guys have a suggested topic that I can talk about for live streams, post them on the Discord, and I'll see if I can address them. So everyone take care, be safe, and if anybody's tipping on either PayPal or Patreon or something and I'm not seeing it, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I gotta change my configuration so I can see better what you're doing. But everyone take care, and I'll catch up with you later.